Hey everyone, welcome to another video. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. I hope you all got spoiled. And today we are back into the thick of things. I have just seen the new Michael Mann film, Ferrari, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you all. So let's get into it. I never knew what to quite make of this with all of the early reactions. I have heard nothing but people talk positively about it, but the scores don't quite reflect that. So I was really interested in really getting into this film and finding out for myself what this film really is, why it's drawing the reactions it is, and why the scores are the way they are. And after seeing the film, I can really understand across the board where everyone's coming from. This film is pretty much like a lot of biopics out there. It follows the story of Enzo Ferrari in 1957, and we're going through a lot here. We're talking about the full uprise and really origins of the Ferrari that we know today. The brand back then wasn't as successful as what it was now. It was on the verge of bankruptcy and taking massive risks and really relying on racing to pull it through, as that is what the brand is known for, excellence in racing. So we're following that, and we're following Enzo Ferrari's commitment to that, which is very interesting. And then we're going into a lot of his personal life and kind of the affairs that he had. You have two parties in this. One is his current wife, played by Penelope Cruz, who has gotten a lot of buzz out of film festivals and many screenings, and I can fully understand why. She absolutely bodies this role. I adored her in this role. You can just tell the amount of experience she has as an actress, and she's really just killing every single scene she's in. Now, some of the time, Michael Mann and screenwriter Troy Kennedy Martin don't always put her in the most compelling of scenes, but she is elevating them anyway because she's just fantastic in this role. She plays perfectly off Adam Driver in this film. The other side to this is Shailene Woodley as the woman that really has Ferrari's heart, and there is a child mixed up in all of this. Now, unfortunately, while I do find scenes between Ferrari and this character quite interesting, I do think Shailene Woodley was horribly miscast in this film. I do think at times she does have potential as an actress. I've seen her do things where she can do well in a really decent sized role. However, in this and the role that she's playing, I think we needed a much more seasoned actress that has already been there and done that. Because with the role that she's taking on, she can't quite capture the nuances of the character. And that is really apparent in the accent. You know, everyone's speaking in an Italian accent here, and she just sounds American, apart from some of the words that every single Westerner can do a very cliched form of an Italian accent on. So I do think at times she just feels so miscast and out of place. And especially when she's playing across from Adam Driver, who is a juggernaut in this film, it's just so hard to keep up. And unfortunately, I don't think she does at times. Adam Driver himself, surprisingly excellent. You know, there's always a little bit of trepidation going into these films where he's putting on an Italian accent. House of Gucci was not very favored by critics or really audiences, to be honest. I thought that he did okay in that role. It's definitely not his best work. So going into Ferrari, I was also a little bit nervous that we're not really going to get a top tier Adam Driver performance out of this film. But he does hold his own and just continues this amazing hot streak he's on. Surprisingly, the films that garner the strongest Adam Driver performances aren't really seen by the masses. Marriage Story maybe being an exception, but I highly recommend you check out Annette, which I think is his best performance to date, as well as White Noise, which he is just fantastic in, and he really continues that form with Ferrari. He is putting on this accent, sure, but he's unwavering as this character. I never really saw a weak spot or where his accent really broke through. He really was committed here and gave it his all, and I think he killed it. And there's some real showy scenes in this film where he delivers. Now, both arcs here, Ferrari's personal life as well as the whole racing arc both have their strengths and weaknesses and ebb and flow throughout the film. I do think the racing one is a little bit more stronger, to be honest with you, because when we start getting to really big tragic sequences, which I wasn't really expecting, it does actually hit quite hard because yes, it's so unexpected, but it works. I think there's just so many great scenes in here that can make you feel something, and that's what I'm going to the theater to ultimately do, feel something. I thought the racing was shot quite superb, to be honest with you. There's some great behind the shoulder angles that I thought really put you in the driver's seat almost and feel really immersive. So I really appreciated that. Also, just the design of these cars from the 50s looks excellent. I'm not someone who knows everything about racing, but I do have some kind of passion and interest in the sport because there's just a lot of tactics at play, and I do think this film does go into that at times with the design of the cars and how certain elements can really make the car go faster at certain times and places on the track. I think that those elements were quite strong in this movie, even if they were quite subtle. But then again, some of these scenes just don't always work, and some of the beats you've kind of seen a lot in other movies, so it can feel a little bit predictable. I also think that this film is one that builds momentum along the way. It starts off at its weakest. This film did not hook me at all within the first act. I was kind of thinking that this was going to be a pretty mediocre movie, but it slowly builds momentum and gives you more and more scenes to cling on to that kind of draw you in. And by the end of the film, I was quite engrossed in the whole thing, to be honest with you. There are also moments that I think feel tonally inconsistent. There are some moments of humor and it brings a lot of levity to some scenes, and I do appreciate that. They mainly came from Penelope Cruz and they just worked within the screenplay. But then also, because we're covering quite a lot of characters here and so many different small subplots and arcs, it does feel like it's trying to tackle too much within its runtime, and because of that, they're not really done justice. So a lot of the side arcs that play out and the emotional moments that they're trying to bring out of you don't really work, and you kind of feel nothing for those characters by the end of the film. Also, a couple of editing quirks here and there do feel a little bit messy. Overall, the editing is pretty solid, but there were just some moments that felt noticeable in the wrong kind of ways. Overall, I think Ferrari's a pretty great movie, to be honest with you. I think it hits a lot of the beats it needs to. It can be a little bit messy at times. There are moments that don't work. I 100% agree with some criticisms there. But if I'm going to give this a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I'm giving this a thumbs up. I do think that this delivered exactly where it needed to. I thought the performances mostly were quite incredible. I think Michael Mann has some solid direction. Screenplay is nice enough. It is a little bit flawed, but it mostly gets the job done. It's just a great ride. It's a great time. And as someone who knew very little about Ferrari, it was nice to get a little bit more of an insight through this film. It just does a little bit more than what I would expect from most standard biopics. As a score, I'm going to give Ferrari probably a weak 4 out of 5. I do think it is great to good, and it's worth recommending. It's worth watching in the theater because the sound really pops, and just watching these cars on screen was incredible and just a nice time. I'm a sucker for some of these racing films, and this one just tapped right into that. And those are my thoughts towards Ferrari. I have plenty of other reviews for 2023 releases. You can check them out in the playlist above. Let me know what you think about this film in the comments below. Don't forget to vote for the People's Choice Award at the 2nd Annual Eddy Awards happening January 10th. You can check that out in the link below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.